Hey, everybody, welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson, and we are joined by one of our favorite people here on the Crit House, Alex Kilbee. How's it? How's it?
How's it, man? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all good. It's so good for you to rejoin us here on our My Five series. So we're doing something different than your previous episodes here, where we're talking about five images that have had an impact on you as a photographer. And but you have a career as a portrait photographer, and you have studied photography. How do you describe yourself as a photographer?
Currently, I am a photographer without portfolio. Maybe that'd be a way of saying it in sync. I kind of like over the years, I've attached various labels to myself. But maybe in the last kind of 5-10 years, I've just kind of gone, I'm just more like a photographer, rather than being a specific kind of thing. I used to make my living from portrait photography, but it's as I've become older, my tastes have kind of drifted away from that.
We asked you to look at five images or choose five images. Was that hard for you? Was it easy? What did you go through in trying to figure out what those five images would be?
It was an interesting sort of dilemma, because I was sitting there kind of going, what are those standout images? And of course, I think, when you get put on the spot, you're sort of like, well, I don't know. And so I have whittled it down. I think that they're five images that signify various points in my career as a photographer, my interest in photography, where it's been like an aha moment, something like that. They're not necessarily images that just like leap out and go, oh my God, that's amazing. But there was something that just triggered a different mindset in the way that I approached images.
Okay, so we're gonna delve into the Alex Kilbee origin story
Yay.
here. Let's take a look at your images. Yeah, we start with Richard Avedon. This is from the series From the West.
In the American West, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about this, and how did it get here?
So I'd been kind of like vaguely interested in photography since I was a child, and then it was at so odds with what I'd been looking at up until that point, that it's not a pretty picture. Here's this person here with this rattlesnake, and the guts are just hanging out, and all of those photographs just kind of said to me, look, you don't have to photograph things that look pretty and nice, and and that are just so. You can make images that stand out, that connect with somebody, that sort of reach out and really kind of sort of stand out from the rest in a very simple way. At least I thought it was simple at the time. I'm like, this is too easy. This is it's just a white light, and and of course it was foolish thinking. But that's kind of when I started to think of photography not simply as kind of pretty pictures, but more about what a photograph conveys. It's in very simple terms, very powerful ways.
Now, this is an interesting one with David Bailey.
Yeah. So now, as you
this.
may have noticed, this is not actually a David Bailey picture, but it is a picture of David Bailey. I don't know if you picked that up, right? So this is David Bailey, and along with Avedon, he was kind of like one of the first people who I kind of gravitated towards when I started taking an interest in a deeper way of photography. He was a huge, or still is a huge name in the UK. Avedon was kind of like that, sort of like, he seemed to know what he was doing. He was very, like very proper, very precise, and something like that. But Bailey had this kind of enfant terrible sort of vibe about him, that he was part of that black trinity of fashion photographers in the 60s. I remember thinking that these guys knew their stuff, right? They never made mistakes. Everything, they just kind of, they got up in the morning and they took photographs, and they were just awesome. And I was kind of struggling. I was in my first year at photo school. I was learning a whole bunch of things. I didn't feel all that confident. And I remember watching a documentary on a VHS, plugged
back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, of David Bailey. And he's busy talking to the interviewer, and he's holding a Hasselblad, and he's playing with it absent-mindedly as he's going on. And he said, look, this is kind of this new camera I've got and stuff. And then you can see he's trying to put the thing back together, and he can't, right? Because he doesn't know why it won't go back on and all sorts of things. And it was at that point, because we just started using Hasselblatt at the photo school, that it was like, oh, he's having the same problem that we're all having, which is, when there's things are out of sync, you can't get them back on, you can't get the backs on. And that was like a moment where I sort of went, these people are just like us. They may take photographs that are amazing, but you know what? They cock up as well.
Yeah. Right.
That was kind of, so that was like an idea saying that it was okay to make mistakes, to kind of, to not be the know-it-all.
Your third image is David Goldblatt. This is one that, knowing the photographs you've taken and your history, I was surprised to see in here. Tell me why this is here and how it arrived.
Okay, so this is where we start going a little bit off piste into
Go
into photographers who, as we were saying off camera earlier, don't get quite the recognition that some of the big names, the Avedons and the Baileys, do. And David Goldblatt was a South African photographer who worked around Joburg mostly. So that's where I grew up. In the I think it was late 60s through to the 90s. And why this sort of connects with me is that we had moved to South Africa, and we moved to a suburb that did not look a million miles different to this particular image. These suburbs are being built. You can see there's a dirt road. The walls, or there are no walls, there's sort of fences. The houses are the same. Everything's the same. And I didn't like that. I didn't like South Africa when I moved there. I was kind of like, I don't want to be here. We'd come from the UK. I was 9. All my friends had left. And I didn't see anything interesting to photograph. It was hot. It was dusty. The houses were boring. There was nothing going on. And it was when I discovered David Goldblatt's photography that there was a big shift. That it was like, hang on a second. These are places that I recognize. These are, I can see this. And what is he seeing in these very same scenes that I'm seeing that I'm missing? I think it is a sign of that shift in mentality of going, I can photograph just everyday sort of things, not in a kind of William Eggleston sort of way.
Yeah.
But it just a slightly sort of documentary style. I also feel kind of nostalgic for these now, because obviously this is my childhood. This is when I was 9, running around on those very streets.
Yeah.
But those photographs, they were so powerful for me because I could connect to them, because they were right outside my doorstep. Yeah. And a lot of the work that you see, Ansel Adams down in Yosemite, I don't live in Yosemite.
Right.
It was always there, but this was immediate. This was real. This was there.
Your number 4, Obi Oberholzer. Is that how you pronounce it?
Obi Oberholzer. Yeah.
Obi
Oberholzer. There's a lot of these seem to be based around photo school period, probably because there was a lot of changes going on at the time. Now, Obi is again a South African photographer. He's still working, and I was studying at Pretoria Tech. I'd been familiar with his work, but I was not familiar with the man. This is before YouTube, and this is before kind of the internet and stuff.
Yeah. And
this larger than life guy who was swearing and carrying on and flucking and things, and it's got up on stage and he talked to us about him taking his photographs of sleeping in open graves, and getting snot drunk on red wine, and then wandering up a hill with his car in the middle of the night to take pictures and stuff like that. And all of a sudden it was this personality was saying, do you know the technical stuff? Yeah, it's as long as you know what you're doing, we don't care. I want the image, man. I want to, he was sucking to paraphrase the Dead Poet Society, he's that sort of sucking the marrow out of life. And it was to listen to him talk, and that passion that he had for photography, of just creating images that he wanted to, that he just didn't care, or does not care anymore if people like them or not, because he made them, and that's there for him. That was like, wow, I love this approach. I was feeling a little bit stayed at the time. I'm very much a
Mhm.
creature of habit, and I was like, everything needs to be just so, just right. And then this guy comes along with all these pictures and saying, just throw yourself at the mercy of the photographic gods. At the time, he was doing a lot of things with painting with light. So he would set up a long exposure and then just paint with torches and things. There's one photograph of his where he said he set up his camera at the top of a pass somewhere in the middle of South Africa, and he drove up and down the pass, which is like 15 or 20 Ks,
And he
four
just
or
left the
five
shutter
times.
open
Yeah,
the
just
whole
left the
time?
shutter up, just left his camera and went off. And you could see every now and again where he says, "Oh, yeah, the car stopped because I thought I'd just get out and have a little dop," and then so and I've always loved his photography. Again, there's an element of nostalgia in there, but I looked at it and go, do you know what? You can photograph the familiar, but
Yep.
you can photograph it in a way that you don't need to to put in meaning or depth or anything like that. Whereas David Goldblatt had he had a message. Obi's is like, I just go take pictures.
And your final image was from Lisa Visser.
Lisa
This is,
Visser. Yeah.
yeah.
So again, another South African name, but she's not. So it's kind of thing. And so we're going to fast forward a number of years, and most of those other stories have been kind of late 80s, very early 90s. But this is probably about 2010, around there. I just moved back to the UK. I was doing lots of wedding photography. I hadn't done any portrait work for some time. I've been doing commercial work, stuff like that, but nothing like portraits. There's no studio work or anything like that. And I decided that I'd had enough of doing weddings. The days are very long, and I was starting to kind of just go,
Oh, the stress.
Yeah, my
Yes.
knees are not happy with this. And I thought, I'm going to get back into the studio. So I opened up a studio, and I was kind of at a bit lost because I wasn't sure what to photograph, or how to photograph again, because I needed some to get back up into to speed. And at the time, Lisa Visser was she was quite big, but also at the time she was the only person in the UK, at least, really leaning into this, let's say, more classic-y, painterly style of portrait photography. This was this is the era, very high key, cross processed, really in your face, wide angle, crazy. Everybody's a family having fun because we're so quirky, kind of stuff. And this was now, and it appealed to my sensibilities about, as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually quite traditional when it comes to it. And I looked at it and went, the tones on this are really lovely. It feels in control. It feels gentle. It feels quiet and delicate, and I love that. And I tried to emulate her, because this is one of those images you look at it and you go, it's quite simple. There's nothing much going on. But then you try and do it, and it's like, wow, this is really good. And obviously, her post processing is really nice. But that was the starting point for me to actually latch onto something that I really that I took with and ran with over kind of the next 10 years.
Your story of all of these images, I think, is very enlightening. First of all, it introduces me to some photographers and images that I was not familiar with before. So thank you for that, and thank you for being so generous with your time here on the Crit House and sharing your wisdom.
It's my wisdom. It's my pleasure, Jeff. It's always nice to share these stories.
You're a treasure to the photographic community, and thank you for that. Thank you for your channel. And if you're interested in showing your images on the Crit House, then maybe go on Instagram and put your 5 images using the hashtag #my5up, and then also tag us at the Crit House, and perhaps we'll talk to you as well. Alex Kilbee, it is always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. Thank you all for watching the Crit House.